and welcome to the Vegas Legal Magazine podcast. I'm Mark Fierro with Vegas Legal Magazine publisher Tyler Morgan. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, our guest, a new bank on the Las Vegas business horizon. Lexicon Bank, right downstairs from our offices in Tivoli Village. The bank's CEO, John Miller, and member of the bank's board, Tim O'Reilly, join us. O'Reilly, in addition to being director of Lexicon Bank, is a partner of the venerable law firm of O'Reilly Law Group. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
And a point of disclosure, we do public relations for the O'Reilly Law Group.
Yeah.
Great to have you here. So tell us, lest anyone be mistaken, John Miller, a Las Vegas guy, a longtime Las Vegas guy.
Yes, a longtime Las Vegas guy. Born and raised here, one of 7 kids, and dad moved out in 57, and I don't think, there's any plan on most of us leaving. So
That's a good thing. Without nobody's taken off, no one's going anywhere when you're talking about banking.
that's right.
So tell us, what was it that drew you into Lexicon Bank? What was the opening you saw?
Yeah, I started on the investment side back in 2000 and really worked for a family office that had investments in community banking and life insurance companies. 2000 was a crazy year. It was the start of the digital age. So all these banks used to file physical call reports, paper documents to Washington. And in 2000, they went electronic. It allowed us to take a lot of information that no one else was processing. And we ended up growing that portfolio from 75 million to 500 million in about 7 years.
Wow.
So.
Wow. What's the opportunity here? What do you see? What's the opening?
There's lots of opportunities. Vegas is far different from what it was when I grew up here. But one of the things, the catalyst for the bank really was the fact that, we lost some institutions after 2007, 2008, 2009. And the reality is those businesses really kind of never came back in. What we've seen come back in are large regionals that have a different focus. Those lending decisions and their focus on the consumers are really being made outside of Las Vegas. So the opportunity for Catalyst or for Lexicon is really for us to have a local bank making decisions about what's going on in Vegas with Vegas knowledge.
Will we be able to get human beings on the phone? That's the thing. Big question, I think, for every entrepreneur that's listening.
We will definitely be able to have direct contact with human beings that can fix your problems when they arise. Banking is a lot more than just transactions. And so from 2008 to last year, a decade took place where most consumers, most businesses, their relationship with their bank was all transaction-based. And we're trying to bring back the concept of your banker is more than just a transaction. It's a relationship that goes from your deposit, your loan, to really what you need to achieve what your goals are. And so we expect to have a conversation with every client, borrower or depositor about what their goals are and how we can help them achieve them.
So you're on sort of the ground floor of getting this bank up and running. What has the experience been like trying to get through the red tape and actually open a bank in the state of Nevada?
Well, I can't say anything bad. The world changed a lot since the last bank I opened. I've been involved in several de novos in the state of Texas and in California. The process is a lot longer than it used to be. And the expectations of what they want to accomplish before they allow you to kind of go out and raise money saying you're going to have insurance has changed a lot. And so nowadays you basically put together your entire team, the entire policies and procedures of the whole institution before they kind of give you that, okay, go ahead. And so that just means the process is a lot longer.
So Mark was talking about when he was asking about the opportunities in Nevada with banking, and one of the biggest subjects right now is the marijuana banking. We don't have a bank for the marijuana facilities. I know you guys aren't necessarily in that, but can you tell the listeners a little bit about what that complexity of an issue is and why more banks aren't just jumping in on that opportunity?
Yeah, I will say, unfortunately, we are not the solution to that problem. The problem is multi-tiered. Nevada has dealt with some of our issues statewide, but when we deal with the FDIC, the Federal Reserve, and clearing with other banks that aren't in in Nevada, that's kind of where the problem arises. And so it's not just one aspect of the relationship that takes place of me taking a deposit and issuing insurance. It's me taking that deposit and what happens with the money after that. And so once I take that deposit as an institution, I'm taking responsibility for where that money goes and what you're allowed to do with it. And we as bankers really never want to take something from a consumer and then tell them they can't do something. And so that's kind of the crux of the problem. And there isn't a great solution out there. There are a couple banks that have tried different ways of doing it. One in Colorado that has a unique approach that maybe someday can be replicated here. But as a de novo, our hands are very limited in what they're going to let us do day one. And so we're focused on what's missing in our community, which are locally made loan decisions and deposit decisions here in the Valley.
Before we leave that topic, I know as bankers you're trying to figure out, but it's hands off. The upside is 500 million cash gross revenue, 70 million to the state. These are not insignificant numbers. But on the other hand, just go a little bit east to Utah, and you're talking about trafficking in narcotics as far as every other state is concerned if you're outside. So the downside is huge. So it's, it's a responsible.
There is no question as a community bankers and bankers across the country are well aware of the fact that what's taking place outside of the banking industry. And we're, as a group, lobbying hard for Washington to get its act together and kind of make some decisions. Yeah.
Tim, your law firm is, you've got your name in here, and your law firm is aligned with entrepreneurs and has been for a long, long time. How did you end up as a part of the new bank?
You know what? We've had the opportunity to know John Miller and his family for many years here in Las Vegas, also being a Las Vegas native. John, I've had the opportunity to follow his career as he's graduated from Notre Dame and been involved in the banking industry for many years. A couple years ago, he came to us and presented an opportunity. And that opportunity was he wants to start a community bank here in our community, a community that he's proud of, a community that we're proud of. So listening to John, understanding John's vision, and asking, frankly, questions in terms of the banking industry and how do you make money in terms of an investor in the bank? What's the purpose of a bank? Why do we need another bank? And John did not shy away from any of the questions. He provided candid answers, and they all made sense. So he gave us the opportunity to be involved in terms of part of the board with him to share in his vision and also be a part of the one of the initial investments in the community as well as the bank.
Your family is well known for that entrepreneurial spirit. John O'Reilly, chairman of Nevada Gaming Commission from 1987 to 1991. And those are the days in Nevada when being part of the gaming structure could get you killed, because he was one of the group of people that helped push the mob out. And that won him a lot of praise, and it also got you guys very, very deep into that entrepreneurial spirit of growing Nevada legitimately.
It truly did, and it was, I was a young kid, thankfully, at that point in time when John was involved in the Gaming Commission. However, I now have the opportunity to work with him in terms of being a business partner. So we do get involved in many startup businesses from the transactional side as well as the litigation side. So it's a true pleasure and honor to work with him, to learn from him, to hear some of his stories, and to understand why he did many things over the years and why he did them.
He is active as well. This is not somebody that's shying away or keeping short hours.
John O'Reilly is extremely active in the practice of law here as well as internationally. John and I maintain communication throughout the day, whether it be in the courtroom, on the telephone, or via emails. We work hard together, and the good news and bad news is sometimes we're on different clocks, which is just fine.
So where are you at in the process? Where's the bank in terms of emerging, where you've got to get?
Yeah, well, we've been raising money. Our minimum requirement capital before we get our insurance and close the offering is $20 million. We
Is
can
that
go
in
up to
deposits
30.
or?
No, that is in capital. So
Okay, so capital
investors,
investment. Okay.
yeah. And we're about $6 million to $4 million away, depending on
Nice.
how those verbal commitments kind of close out. And so we hope to do that in the next 45 days. So if you're interested in investing, make sure you give us a call quickly and commit. Once that process gets done, the chartering aspect of meeting all the requirements and able to take deposits probably is another 30 days. So the reality is in April, May kind of soft opening in Tivoli, where we signed our lease. We'll be opening in a temporary branch while we finish the permanent branch.
It's pretty exciting. And that gives you your FDIC stamp on the door.
It does. It'll give us our FDIC stamp and lots of regulations that go with it.
Oh, lots of
A
red
book
tape.
of them. Not to belabor this point, but to just to back up for a minute, would you shy away from any 420 money as investment money, as in seed money?
Yeah. So this is an interesting thing. Just like they can pay taxes, we could take an investment. Our problem is we can't take cash.
So there is that.
And so that's our problem. We the escrow accounts are all held by a banker's bank, and so but they're allowed to wire in money if they're interested in investing. And one of the things we do with all our clients is really try to understand what their needs are. And so I know there's a lot of people out there that want to bank that industry, but I question how well they actually know what their needs are. And so that's, one of the things we want to know what's going on in Vegas and be involved. Whether or not we have every answer for every business, we're not going to say we do. And we're going to happily push them along to where they belong and who can get those answers done for them.
One of the things I learned when I moved out here was not, and you'll appreciate it, is not every bank that does so in other states actually provides IOLTA accounts out in Nevada. Are you guys planning on providing IOLTA accounts for law firms?
We may or may not. It really depends on what we've talked about it, but it's a pricing issue. And
What draws banks away from providing that service?
So titles, escrows, IOLA accounts, they're all in that realm of you have to have a dedicated amount of volume to really make it make sense.
Okay.
And so they can be very competitive in that aspect. It may not seem like it. It always feels like what it is on the other side. But for us, it's a liability aspect of what we have to do to make that make sense. And we don't want to go down the road of being in a business that we can't provide reasonable service at reasonable prices for you. So we'll happily send you somewhere else if that's the case.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of depth to develop any sort of expertise and stop loss in that.
Yeah, there's a plus and a minus to every niche.
Sure.
And so understanding what you can do and what you can do well is important. And so we want to definitely be focused on what we think we can do well and what we think's missing in the market. And that's really customer service associated with banking. And so that's our focus.
I miss tellers.
Oh,
Being able to just
or just being
go
able
a
to talk to
person.
somebody without a hunk of
Yeah.
plexiglass between you. So give us the five. What are those five revenue streams? What are the perfect customers for you? What are their profiles, business?
Yeah, obviously commercial real estate is something we'll have invested in, both owner occupied and investor base. Professional services, so doctors, lawyers, the dentists out there. And then, I think there's a lot in the service industry that'll be interesting to us, from light industrial stuff all the way up to franchise stuff. So those are that's the bread and butter business of what we'll do on the lending side. But there'll be AR lines and lots of different types of alternative lending aspects for businesses as they go through growing pains. And understanding the growing pains is part of the problems that the big banks just can't do. A small business for the big guys, it used to be 5 million, then 10 million, and now it's 500 million. And so there's a big gap for them to be able to really understand what's going on in smaller businesses.
This isn't your first rodeo, and I think your experience is reassuring. Talk about your background. Not all of it has been swinging out of the park, because if you hang around long enough, you're going to end up with an arrow in your back.
That's true. There's been great experiences. We started one bank in Texas with $9 million in capital. It's still around today. It's over $1 billion. It's been a phenomenal investment. But no, you're right. They don't all work out like that. I'll say it's a learning experience, but it was definitely a horror story at the time when you're living it. Definitely feels like walking into a dark garage knowing that there's an axe murderer in there and you're going to do it anyway. Bad horror story. But I joined a commercial bank in Utah. There was a mortgage company that was doing $1 trillion in forward mortgages. It was wagging the bank's tail.
Yeah.
And ended up having to go become the president of the mortgage company and fire 700 employees and close 23 branches in 40 different states. So, I've gotten to see the worst of what banking can be when you have to deleverage an institution. It can be a very hard thing. I'm much more happy to be back in a different business environment where I get to be in charge of growing something that's going to be a community value and a community add. So,
Seems like the Nevada economy is very, very strong, not just emerged from the depths, but kind of shot out of the depths. What do you see when you look out at the forecast in the next couple of years?
well, as a banker, I hate forecasting, but I can say that I think the opportunity that we find ourselves being in Las Vegas is we're no longer a small town, but we have an opportunity to become a real metropolis. And that means that there's a lot of periphery businesses that are still operating in other places and not really operating here. They have workforces here, but they haven't moved headquarters here. They haven't moved real personnel and groundwork to be a Vegas-based company. And so I think that takes place over the next couple of years. I think we see the opportunity for the city and the state to invest in infrastructure that changes us from being just a town full of big buildings and lights to a town that really is a city. And so I see, from transportation, whether it be light rail or something else, I see all of those things transformative to who we are as a community. And I look forward to being involved in the growth of that business corridor as they expand in Las Vegas and Clark County.
I see a lot of, we see them on TV, these online banks, and you see a lot of small, 1 to 2 location commercial banks. When you're, as a banker, when you're meeting with potential customers to bring them onto your bank, how much weight is put onto the location of the brick and mortar bank versus the services that you provide and them just being able to just work with you efficiently and get what they need on the service side versus...
Yeah, brick and mortar has changed a lot as technology has changed. But I do think it's a focus. So, what we're building at Tivoli is really more of a gathering point than what you would think of as a traditional bank. We're going to use technology. That's the nice thing about being new. Technology kind of is supposed to get cheaper over time. So we get all the bells and whistles day one. We're not rolling out legacy systems, and we're really going to be geared for using technology to be your bank where you are and not be your bank when you come to us. That said, our model almost looks more like a lounge. Like when you go there, it should feel like a luxury experience. So it should feel like something that...
Is it going to have the, what is it, the Citibank has like a coffee shop now or something?
Yeah.
Something that they do.
There'll be coffee there, yes, of course. But it's the concept that, you're not walking into all of these people standing behind this big bulletproof glass. They're sitting at lowboy desks. The chairs are lowboy. It's an experience, a relationship. You're sitting down and you're talking to someone who knows you and quickly is able to familiarize yourself with your account. And that's a different experience. And so when you have to come in, when technology isn't enough to get the transaction done, we want that experience to feel like it should, like you'd want to be there. And so that's the difference. But when you talk about branching in general, there may be an opportunity for one more branch somewhere in Henderson at some point in the future. If technology doesn't serve those needs or our customers kind of really say, hey, it'd be nice not to have to drive there as frequently. But the reality is I see more and more of our transactions really being telephone and technology based.
Interesting.
There is definitely an opportunity there. I'm with a big bank, and as the months go on, there are fewer and fewer tellers, and longer lines every time you walk into the bank, to the point I never go to the bank. I always send somebody else because I just don't have that kind of time. I can't set aside a half an hour to go put checks in. I
It's
can't.
time because I go to the bank almost every single day, and it's a process of waiting in line because I don't get checking accounts for my business accounts because I just don't pull operating funds out of an ATM. Everything's written out of the check or used on a credit card. So when I deposit, I have to wait in line because I don't have the ATM card to, put it through the machine.
So
and
we'll have
everything.
to sit down with you and figure out a way
It's-
for that to be more
it's,
efficient.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, there's like no tellers.
worse and
They want you to
worse
use these
and
ATM
worse.
machines to do everything.
You put yourself in a position of entrepreneur. Is that what you bring to the table when you're in meetings discussing the direction that this bank takes?
I believe that's one of the aspects we bring to the table. It's also the local community involvement. As John indicated, it's a business for the people. It's a business for the small entrepreneur who wants to succeed in our community. There's going to be peaks and valleys. There's peaks and valleys that we experience from the legal side as well, dealing with clientele. So we'll be able to understand in terms of what some of those individuals are going through or what they should be going through, what they would expect in terms of being involved.
When I was a kid, I had the good fortune to be around Earl Evanson, who was like the number 2, number 3 guy at Valley Bank in the good old days. And here I was, a long-haired kid, had a decent job, and I was about to get a far better job. But the long hair and all that stuff back then, I walk into Worthen Buick on East Sahara, and I'm looking at this brand new Buick. That was a car then. That was really, really something. And the salesman looks at me and says, "Can I help you? Like, get out, get out of here, basically." And I said, "Well, I'm kind of interested in this car, but it's in the middle of the showroom, you know." He says, "How are you going to buy this car?" I said, "Well, actually, my friend and I have Earl Evanson's name on a piece of paper with a phone number, and of course anybody could have done that." And he walks out, and he comes back and he goes, "Want to go for a test drive?" Because he knew this.
Yeah.
Earl wasn't taking a shot with somebody else's money just because he knew me, he knew my job, he knew how long I had been at the same job, and it's that touch that you remember forever. Those are days that you could somebody knew who you were, knew what you brought to the table, and there wasn't a whole bunch of stuff to get
Yeah,
through.
and I think that's the neat thing about the group of people we put together on the board. I mean, they're not just sitting on a board, and it's not just other people's money. Everybody on the board invested money. I'm personally putting in $1 million of my hard-earned money, and so those decisions are really about what's best for not only the capital that I'm invested in, but what the ending result is. And so I see that as being that relationship going out. Every time we look at a deal, we talk about opportunity. It's about who we are and what we want to happen. And so I think that's part of that. That's when you're a community bank, when that's really driving the self-interest, when it's your money and it's your relationship and you're putting your name on it.
So as you're waiting to get your approval and you're raising the $20 million, where does a startup bank deposit their money while they're waiting to take deposits?
A banker's bank. A banker's bank. So, bankers' banks function, there's a couple around the country, but they function at that level of helping us achieve our both liquidity and overages and deposits. So they're kind of that buffer between us and the Federal Reserve.
Interesting.
Anchor. Yeah, anchor. It is interesting for those of us who were here when the city hit 1 million. There were a bunch of very nice businesses that would never think of locating here under any circumstances, and then suddenly, when we hit that million population of 1 million for Clark County, all of a sudden there were names of companies that never looked twice at us, and I get the feeling that we're at another one of those thresholds. That the Golden Knights play a role, that the Raiders play a role. You mentioned high-speed transportation, the possibility of making Las Vegas a suburb of Southern California. I get the feeling that we've got another one of those in us that is coming up.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think, it's interesting just to see the momentum of who's running businesses today. And I know John's actively involved, but your involvement in the firm is is young blood. I mean, it is the next generations of Las Vegans that are taking their own level of risk and taking their reins of those businesses and really driving what Vegas is becoming. So I get really excited about the fact that all of those things are they're wind at our back. And I feel like the wind at Vegas's back right now is something that's going to last for a significant period of time. And, pullbacks come and go. In the banking world, pullbacks aren't always bad, especially when you're the new guy on the block. It allows us that opportunity to, when your other bank says no, we want you to say, we want to be able to say yes. And so for us, all of those things are starting those relationship discussions, whatever the catalyst for those being.
Well, it's nice to hear the word banking and human being in the same sentence again. It's been a while, I have to say that much. And with that, we call it a day, the Vegas Legal Magazine podcast. I want to sincerely thank John Miller, CEO of Lexicon Bank, and Bank Director Tim O'Reilly for joining us today. If you care about this topic, about the business community, about entrepreneurial spirit in Las Vegas, you can share this podcast on Facebook, tell your friends about it, iTunes, Stitcher, or Vegas Legal Magazine's YouTube station. Thank you for joining us.